What do you value? Hello Internet, my name is Chris and I'd like to welcome you to Faith Elements. On a warm, sunny Saturday morning, I found myself inside one of those newer, supersized Kroger market stores we have in our area. It was my first trip to this mammoth purveyor of assorted goods, and I was just there for a gallon of milk, but since it was my first time in the store, I decided to just walk around the store for a few minutes just to get a feel for the place since it was all so new. One thing that I came to understand as a child that anything new is cool and exciting. So this place surely met the mark established by the younger Chris that still holds some level of governance in the older Chris. I found my way to the magazine rack. There is just something about magazines that seem to hold some attraction. Maybe it's the fact that I like to read, but I don't have a lot of time to commit to full-length books. Magazines give me a sense of accomplishment in a shorter amount of time since the trip from the front cover to the back is usually a little shorter. This magazine rack is all the more attractive because of its size and newness. Like I said before, anything that is new is cool. Also, that anything that there's a lot of is cool, according to the younger Chris, who still resides in my mind. This rack was new and had a lot of magazines, so it was very cool. So I'm sitting there, thumbing through this month's edition of Popular Mechanics. I've never had a subscription to the magazine, but it has always been one of my favorites. Its magnetic forces cannot be resisted by the tech geek inside me. I'm constantly fascinated by the latest news and everything from solar energy to alternative fuels to the latest in electronics. Now, as I was standing there reading, I stepped a few feet away from the rack. This is, after all, proper magazine rack browser etiquette, out of respect for others who might happen to be browsing near you. Although, I seem to be one of the few people in existence who seems to know and adhere to this unwritten rule of society. My physical step back away from the rack was accompanied by a wide-angle picture of the magazines and how they are grouped. There were magazines about import cars and how fast they can be made to go. There were magazines dedicated to off-roading. There were boat and fishing and skiing magazines. There was an entire section that seemed to be dedicated to bodybuilding to the point that the only clothes you could wear were skillfully worn t-shirts. Now, I can't imagine what someone would want with a 25-inch bicep, but apparently it makes some people very happy. My step back became not only physical, but spiritual in nature as well. My step back allowed me not only a wider view of the magazine rack, but also a view of our society through what we value. There in front of me was a small example of the priorities of our society. Then I found myself asking some questions from my eternally focused existence and perspective. What is the eternal value of 30-inch rims on my car? What does the latest in 20 milliwatt green laser sights for pistols do for the kingdom of God? Is there some value that lends itself to the Christian life that I can glean from the February edition of Rolling Stone? Or any issue of Rolling Stone for that matter? I concluded that while I might not be able to answer yes to any of these questions, maybe there's something of value in standing in the middle of a Kroger on a Saturday morning, staring in wonder at the plethora of magazines before me. The rack of magazines is a singular unit. The rack, metaphorically, is a window into the hearts and minds of our society. These are the things that much of society holds near and dear to their hearts. Biblical accounts found in Matthew and Luke both tell us that our treasure and our heart are both found in the same place. Kroger would not have these paper attractions of the heart if there were no treasure to be had in them or in the sales to the consumer. After thinking about this for a while, I looked around for anything that had anything to do with the Christian life, and I found nothing. This made me think a lot about what I place value on. I've been spending a lot of time doing that over the past decade or so, but it is always good to find those reminders in the midst of our everyday lives. That rack serves as a reminder that not only do I have to focus on what matters, but it also serves as a window into the lives of those that occupy this area with us. We need to understand that we don't all share the same set of values. We can't assume that everyone looks at this life in the same light. Now, before you start running off with your thoughts, can I add that I in no way discern an issue with someone who wants to buy a magazine that isn't about God. That's not what I'm getting at all. I occasionally pick up magazines that focus on drumming or photography or iPhones or iPads. But if you will permit me to get a little philosophical, I would propose that the grocery store magazine rack can somewhat reflect the values of our society, much like our web browsing history reveals what we consider important on the internet. Jesus said, "By their fruit you will recognize them." Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or fig thistles? A little later in Matthew, Jesus says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And be honest with yourself and think of something that your checkbook shows that you treasure greatly. Will that thing matter in 100 years? Something to pray about, don't you think? Be sure to subscribe above and continue this conversation down in the comments below. Even if you disagree with my words and my thoughts, I'd still like to hear your thoughts. And hit the share button and ask some others to join in the conversation. Take care.